Welcome, explicados. So, I want you to imagine a band that was literally born before giant rock festivals were even a thing. A band that went head to head with the Beatles, survived massive scandals, crazy lineup changes, bitter internal feuds, and just profound tragedies. And yet, over 60 years later, they are still the absolute, undeniable synonym for rock and roll, right? It's wild. This is the ultimate survival story of the Rolling Stones. We're going to dive into exactly how they did it, and trust me, it wasn't by playing it safe. Our story actually starts way before the massive stadiums. We're in early 1960s London. Picture this. Two childhood acquaintances, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, happen to bump into each other at the Dartford train station. And what reconnects them? It's a shared obsession with imported American blues records. Jagger is literally carrying albums by Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry under his arm. Now, in Britain at the time, these records were basically like secret artifacts. From this one seemingly totally random conversation, one of the most famous creative partnerships in music history is born. But here's the thing, the real initial spark, that came from Brian Jones. He was this ambitious, extraordinarily curious young guitarist who just wanted to put together a pure rhythm and blues group. So, slowly, all the pieces start gathering around him. You've got Jagger, Richards, pianist Ian Stewart. And then by 1963, bassist Bill Wyman and drummer Charlie Watts complete the whole puzzle. Oh, and the name? They pulled that directly from a Muddy Waters track called Rollin' Stone. Okay, flash forward to July 12th, 1962. They play their first official gig at London's Marquee Club. Now, at this point, they're only playing covers of American artists. But listen, if you were standing in that smoky room, you would have already felt something totally different. You've got Jagger's captivating movement, Richards with this raw, aggressive attack on the guitar, Jones adding these incredible instrumental colors, and then Watts just holding it all together with this elegant calm behind the drum kit. It might have looked messy, but musically, the chemistry was absolutely unique. And this brings us to their next crucial move, which is all about image. Enter a young manager named Andrew Loog Oldham. He realizes pretty quickly that playing great music isn't enough. They need a distinct identity. So while the Beatles were projecting this clean-cut, friendly, orderly image, Oldham goes the complete opposite direction. He positions the Stones as the dangerous, rebellious anti-Beatles. We're talking longer hair, defiant attitudes, just an energy that made adults deeply uncomfortable. And to make sure they lasted, Oldham essentially locks a very reluctant Jagger and Richards in a room and says, look, you've got to start writing your own material. At first, they honestly aren't sure they can pull it off, but man, they soon find their magic formula. Simple, unforgettable riffs mixed with just pure attitude. And then, in 1965, one single riff changes absolutely everything. I Can't Get No Satisfaction hits the airwaves. Richards used this new fuzz pedal to make his guitar sound like a blaring horn section. That hook becomes instantly recognizable in literally seconds, taking them from a successful British act to a massive global phenomenon. They weren't just playing the blues anymore, they were inventing their own musical language. Moving into the mid-60s, the band really leans into musical experimentation. They drop huge tracks like Paint It Black, Ruby Tuesday, and Jumpin' Jack Flash. And Brian Jones is highly instrumental here, right? He's expanding their entire soundscape by bringing in unconventional instruments like sitars and marimbas. But there's a serious rift forming. As Jagger and Richards become the absolute core creative engine of the band, Jones, who is battling severe personal and legal issues, becomes more and more isolated from the very group he helped create. Eventually, the tension reaches a breaking point. After releasing the incredible 1968 album Beggar's Banquet, the band completely fractures. In June 1969, Brian Jones leaves the group. And tragically, just a few weeks later, he's found dead in his swimming pool at only 27 years old. It's a brutal, devastating event that firmly and permanently closes the first chapter of the Rolling Stones' history. The band has to pivot, and quickly. Mick Taylor, a technically brilliant guitarist, steps in just in time for this massive free concert in London's Hyde Park in July 1969. To put that into perspective, they went from that tiny, smoky Marquee Club to a sea of literally hundreds of thousands of people. This era also marks the release of Let It Bleed. That album features the haunting track Gimme Shelter, which just perfectly and powerfully captures the dark, turbulent end of the decade. But that exact same year brings an even darker milestone, the disastrous Altamont Free Festival in California. The organization was total chaos. Tragically, a young fan dies in a clash right in front of the stage during their set. Altamont really acts as the grim reverse side of the 1960s festival dream. Historians widely view it as the definitive end of the flower power era. It permanently stripped away any innocent, fun image the band had and cemented a truly dangerous, heavily burdened reputation. Now, what's truly remarkable about this period is the sheer creative willpower they demonstrate, because out of all that chaos comes an unmatched four-album creative peak. Between 1968 and 1972, they dropped Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street. They just flawlessly blend rock, blues, country, gospel, and soul. At this point, they're no longer chasing anyone. They are the absolute blueprint for rock and roll. Let's look a little closer at how that blueprint was actually forged. In 1971, fleeing UK taxes, the band relocates to the sweltering Villa Nelcote in France. They turn its basement into this gritty, cable-strewn, completely improvised recording studio. This is where a huge chunk of Exile on Main Street comes to life. Amidst the intense heat, the late-night sessions, and just absolute chaos, they create a dirty, profound, and deeply alive masterpiece. And all the while, Mick Jagger permanently cements himself as the definitive rock frontman. But as we know, stability is always fleeting for the Stones. Mick Taylor leaves the band in 1974, but his departure opens the door for Ronnie Wood, who brings a vital, fresh chemistry to the group. Wood and Richards seamlessly develop a revolutionary guitar style together. Instead of having strict lead and rhythm roles, their two guitars kind of weave lines together in what Richards famously called the ancient art of weaving. They continuously swap functions, and it breathes this entirely new, deeply unified energy right into their live sound. Then the late 70s roll in, and punk and disco are threatening to make all these legacy 60s bands completely obsolete. But the Stones? No way. They refuse to be left behind. They adapt by totally absorbing the frantic, gritty new energy of New York City's streets and clubs. The result is 1978's Some Girls. It's an album that beautifully melds their raw rock roots with the pulse of the city, and it sends the track Miss You straight to the top of the disco dance floors. Talk about a pivot. Now, surviving cultural shifts is one thing, but surviving each other? That is a whole different story. The 1980s brings severe internal feuds. Keith Richards actually referred to this period as World War III. Jagger is off seeking a modern solo career, while Richards is fiercely defending the sanctity of the band. For years, they barely even speak, yet they never officially split up. Realizing their partnership is just too important to abandon, they reunite in 1989 for the album Steel Wheels and hit the road for massive tours again. That very same year, the ultimate bad boys of rock are officially inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rolling Stones didn't just return in the 90s, they evolved into a completely different beast. Through the 90s and 2000s, even after original bassist Bill Wyman leaves, the core just keeps going. They release albums like Voodoo Lounge, Bridges to Babylon, and A Bigger Bang, and totally transform their live shows. They went from those sweaty blues clubs to theaters and finally evolved into a gigantic, meticulously designed global stadium spectacle, literally playing to generations of fans. And then, the band suffers its most devastating blow in decades. The very heartbeat of the Rolling Stones stops in 2021 when the elegant, unshakable 80-year-old Charlie Watts passes away. This was the man whose drums held their sound together for almost 60 years. Steve Jordan bravely takes over the drums, making every massive, LED-lit stadium show moving forward a really poignant, deeply respectful tribute to Charlie. At this point, you'd probably think they were content just managing their incredible legacy, right? But, defying all expectations, they get back into a modern recording studio. 2023 brings us Hackney Diamonds, which is their first album of original songs in nearly 2 decades. And it's far from just some nostalgic souvenir. It features recordings from Watts before he passed, it unites multiple generations of guest artists, and it absolutely proves that their creative engine is still roaring. So, the real takeaway here is their stunning, undeniable relevance today. Hackney Diamonds resonated so powerfully that it won the Grammy for Best Rock Album in 2025. Just think about that. That is over 60 years after that very first chaotic gig at the Marquee Club. It's honestly mind-blowing. When we look back at this incredible timeline, from the blues to rebellion through major crises, a creative peak, intense tensions, and finally into a global stadium legacy, we find the real secret to their survival. It wasn't about refusing to change. It was exactly the opposite. They survived by rolling with the times, absorbing new producers, genres, and technologies. But they did all of that while never, ever losing that raw, Jagger-Richards blues rock core that made their imperfections absolutely perfect. The Rolling Stones started out simply trying to play the music of their blues heroes. And through relentless adaptation and an unwavering commitment to who they truly were, they survived to become the heroes for countless generations of bands that followed. Remember, everything is explained here. See you in the next video.
Enjoyed it? Join the Explicados. Subscribe up here. And leave your comment below. I might read it in the next video.